Orange pill. Orange pill. Orange pill.
Yeah, orange pill. Yeah, it's a fantastic situation for sure. For sure.
It's here for you. Hey, there was a Cuban Missile Crisis this week, and that's the theme of this episode. It's rug pulls and the inevitable devaluations coming, because not only did we see billionaire Mark Cuban get rug pulled by some shitcoin, but we also saw Jay Powell speak. We saw Janet Yellen speak, and Jay Powell was like, oh, guess what? There seems to be some inflation. And markets were like volatile, very, very volatile. Janet Yellen said the H word. She said that there will be no hyperinflation. She does not think so.
That's reassuring. Yeah, a lot of rug pulls. And by rug pull, we mean sudden trapdoor opening, collapse of various asset prices. I guess the most famous of the past week, the most noteworthy would be Mark Cuban and Titan. Titan is a Ethereum / altcoin project that's designed by scammers for scammers. He got scammed because he's a scammer. Hello?
Yeah, everybody's a scammer, right? The Cuban Missile Crisis, somebody put it on Twitter, and you obviously see the collapse there of the price of this, whatever this stupid token is that he invested in. And it reminded me of the 30-year Treasury yield right after Jay Powell spoke. First, the yield spiked, and then it crashed. So Max had said with our microdose that this would happen, that it would the yields would go back down below 1%, no matter how much they intervene and try to do all sorts of crazy stuff.
Well, they're intervening because they want yields to go under 1%, right? So and they have an infinite printing press to do it, and that's their goal. And even though it's causing inflation, because one way to get away with it is that they don't call the rise in prices for food and energy and stuff, they don't call that inflation, they call it deflation. And then Bloomberg and CNBC and the Wall Street Journal, they pile on and say, oh my God, what are we going to do about this deflation? And the people at home are sitting there wondering, I just paid 50% more for groceries. My healthcare and my education costs are up 500% in 10 years. How is that possibly deflation?
Right, because you know what? I got this just from Amazon delivered, tagine. A lot of my friends are talking about it online. So it's a classico seasoning from Mexico. But it's the perfect rim. You know, this is the sort of job they pull on you from the central banks. All shitcoiners do this, right? So you got to keep the Ponzi alive. You got to dump your bags. You got to keep the people faithful. You got to keep the people believing in your scheme. So, you know, just like Bernie Madoff, okay, you have investors, so-called investors in your scheme, and they kind of, what we learned from the Madoff victims is that they actually kind of suspected that they were in a Ponzi scheme, some sort of scheme. Okay, they thought he was defrauding the markets because he had been involved with NASDAQ and the algorithms behind NASDAQ and stuff. So they thought he had found a way to defraud other investors and that they were getting a cut of it. So this is what you see with shitcoiners as well, is that they understand it's a centralized scheme and that there's somebody losing out if they're the early investors are making money. But that includes the US dollar especially. So this is a lot of the problems we see in the world related to this. And, you know, we cover this on Kai's Report. We cover this on Orange Pill Podcast here. And I was responding to a tweet from Gold Telegraph where they said more than 2 million homeowners are behind on their mortgages and risk being forced out of their homes in a matter of weeks, according to the Harvard University Housing Report. So, of course, homeowner, they're huge debt holders, huge mortgage right? So they're inside the scheme. They're your Ponzi victims. You need to keep them pushing other people to get into the scheme. You need to get them like an Amway sort of thing, like, here, buy this product, you'll get super rich. The moratorium will be extended. QE is forever. There is no going back to what there was before the intervention.
Right. For a couple of points. So first of all, the people that are behind on their mortgages, is that it?
Yeah.
And they are going to be facing foreclosure soon. Okay, that's not going to happen.
Never.
The government's going to print a lot more money. So that's inflationary. Same thing with student debt. They're not going to get rid of it or anything like that. They're just going to print a lot of money. Everyone can just pay with the more printed money. That's why inflation is going to go skyrocketing and even higher than it is now, and the government can't stop it. Number two, yeah, like Bernie Madoff, you get people vested into your fraud, and then they put the blinders on. And you see this in the shitcoin market all the time because, people get into these shitcoins and then they get behind the personalities that are involved in these shitcoins. And then they are reluctant to call out the shitcoin. So, and I saw this this week on Twitter. So you had a situation in El Salvador, they're making it legal tender, thanks to Jack Mallers and Bitcoin Beach and all things that are going on there. But the second that happened, and it was a watershed moment in Bitcoin history, and it effectively made every single altcoin useless because now you've got legal tender of Bitcoin, you've got mining with volcanoes, it's green, it's ESG, and every claimed benefit of every other shitcoin, all 10,000 of them, instantly went up in smoke. There's no benefit of any of them other than it may be an interesting software project, but there's no reason to be buying or trading it. That I don't buy and sell, it's stupid. So the point being that the second that news came out, a flood of carpetbaggers ran to El Salvador and had their photo taken with important people in government right away and claimed like this has been their victory, from the beginning. And
we're all part of a community. It's the same community.
They didn't get called out on it because they, over the past years, 10 years in some cases, had gotten people invested in their shit projects. So you're essentially buying people's loyalty by investing in shit projects. That's another reason to avoid shit projects is not only are they shit, but you're buying your quiescence into this shit project. And what I saw this past week is truly disgusting. These carpetbaggers flying into El Salvador to claim victory on top of Jack Mallers' work. And Peter McCormick was very instrumental in kind of, doing on the ground journalism and really talking about what's really going on there. And suddenly to see these charlatans show up, it was pretty disgusting.
And I just want to point out here to go follow this guy. I'm going to put his name up on the screen. He was the very first one to actually bring the very, very first shop in El Zonte to have Bitcoin, to accept Bitcoin. And it was his mother's shop. So he started something that is now turned the first nation to accept Bitcoin as a legal tender. But, the thing about these, the shitcoins that we were talking about is that, they kind of remind me of like, how in YouTube or Twitter or Facebook, these outright scammers, they don't even pretend to be otherwise. They pretend to be us, but they just jump onto our work, our content, and like giant dingleberries and like, hey, WhatsApp me, send me a WhatsApp, send me a WhatsApp, send me your money, send me your money. It's just like, and you're like, ew, click, go away. And they just like cling on to all your work and it's like vandalism, right? So these people flying into El Salvador with their shitcoins, they're vandalizing the work of others. It's been over the past 2 or 3 years that, Bitcoin Beach became what it became, drawing in the likes of Jack Mallers to help them with some solutions, which led to the president, Nayib Bukele, really kind of getting it, like doing some interesting stuff, including the volcano energy stuff. So they just are as sleazy and tawdry and just like gross and obvious as like those people who sit there in the comments under our YouTube. WhatsApp me, I'm Max, send me a message.
Right. Well, I've said before that living organisms host parasites, and sometimes the parasites are beneficial, or sometimes the good bacteria, as it's called, you drink probiotics for the good bacteria. And, there is a role for bacteria and parasites in nature. I mean, they exist, because there has been, evolutionary speaking, a role for them. But in the free market capitalist system, you have essentially a Darwinian competition going on. Bitcoin in the last 5 years has gobbled up huge portions of available hash rate, well over 90%. And it's going higher now. So it's not about being inclusive. It's not about being open-minded. It's about recognition that there was an evolutionary competition going on, and now it's over. Bitcoin won. So, if I saw a 12-eyed, three-legged flying snake suddenly appear, I would say, chances of you surviving are very slight. There's no way this is going to happen. The same thing with every shitcoin. They just don't have any reason to exist. And that's not me being toxic or mean. I'm just saying the market has spoken, and the market is the final arbiter.
Yeah, anything. I mean, some of the misunderstanding, the so-called we're going to investigate and this is inquiry, like all the inquiry ended in 2017. And that's like, just like that Cambrian explosion we've talked about, where you see 500 million years ago, like mammals were like starting to emerge out of the muck of like the slime and slugs out of the sea. And what you saw were the experiments of like, well, maybe we should do this. Maybe we should compete with Microsoft. Maybe we should compete with AWS. Maybe we should have some eyes. Yeah, eyes are good. You can see where you're going, right? Okay, well, obviously more eyes are better than just one, right? Let's have 7. Oops, like, and then evolution, the perfect answer emerged. So in the in the cypherpunk era, they tried a few things first, right? And then Bitcoin emerged. Well, the same thing happened with evolution of mammals and species, is like the 2 eyes, what do they call it? Like bipedal. Like there's like a asymmetric, like you have the spine down the middle and the 2 sides, 2 lungs, 2 eyes, 2 ears. Like that became the natural evolution, the setup that worked best. It just worked best.
And it's even more fundamental than that. So all of the ecosystem exists upon an even more fundamental layer of cosmic evolution in the galaxy and in the universe and in our solar system, where things like here on planet Earth that evolved, that encourage life, oxygen, right? So nothing replaces oxygen. Oxygen is the winner. And Bitcoin is the winner. We're not going to suddenly have competition for oxygen. We're not going to swap oxygen for some other gas. It's not going to work. It's oxygen won, just like Bitcoin won. It's a very fundamental particle. It's something that humans have been questing for more than 100,000 years, for perfect money, perfect price discovery. And Bitcoin is essentially born flawless, which is unique. It's immaculate. We haven't hardly ever seen that, but there it is.
Now, there was a debate like a decade ago in the US, like they wanted to teach intelligent design rather than evolution or any human role or species role in their own development. And that's kind of where our financial system is, right? It's command and control. And they think that they are more intelligent, that it's intelligent design by them. So you see, Draghi says more stimulus needed to return to pre-COVID trend. Well, the trend was not anybody's friend. Like they want to go to a trend that they themselves established, which was too much debt, too much fiat, too much high time preference, too much misallocation of capital, all these things that were set up a situation whereby this pandemic could shut down global trade, destroy supply chains, like do all this stuff that, that human instinct for survival would ordinarily say, hey, let's make sure we don't return to the trend of how it was before, because that was not working.
Right. The money printing caused the pandemic, and returning the trend with more stimulus means more pandemics for the reasons you just stated. The emphasis on sustainable systems that are verifiable, systems that are fundamentally sound, money that's sound, and society that's built on institutions that are sound went out the window as everything became securitized, commodified, and traded on various exchanges and then derivatives on top of that, gave us this pandemic. And the spread of the pandemic, the absence of reliable media is because of too much money printing, allowing for consolidation in the media space. The absence of effective pharmaceutical kind of response times and medical response time is because our medical systems become privatized, and it's basically just winner take all, and it's driven by fiat money. So when Draghi says, oh, we need to go back to the trend of printing more money, what he's saying is, I want to guarantee we have the same thing, but much worse. Just like for the past 20 years, or for the past, in 2008, for example, when they had the global financial crisis, we said within 10 or 12 years, you'll have the exact same thing, but much worse, because the solution will be to double down, triple down, quadruple down on the problem. That is money printing. That's what they did. That's what we are. That's part of the pandemic. If in 2008, they had actually they had bailed out the debtors and not the creditors, I doubt this pandemic would have had this detrimental effect that it did have, because it would have forced a lot more price signals to go through in and out of the system in a way that would have been much healthier for everyone globally.
Well, they didn't even need to intervene. They didn't need to bail out the debtors, because essentially the debtors get bailed out in a mass bankruptcy, in a mass collapse, right? Like the creditors lose. And what the intervention was to prevent the evolution of the capitalist system was they stepped in to say, okay, that debtor is unable to pay you. You, the capital allocator, did a shit job. You shouldn't have lent so much to them. We're going to step in and pay it for you on behalf by taking it from everybody across the entire global economy through inflation and further misallocation of capital. So that's not like the survival of the fittest. If you're, it's like that's why Bitcoin is so much better, because you do have human individuals on the top of the fiat pyramid schema, right? And who doesn't want to help, like your friend, or some like a well-meaning idea or something. So you watch those nature documentaries out in the Serengeti, and if you had your way, right, you would step in and say, oh, bad lion, don't eat that little gazelle, that's so cute, and it's just, look how scared it is, and this is like a horrible thing for you to do. So that's the brutal reality of nature and evolution, of what the survival of the fittest is about. And here we have friends of these top banking executives, these CEOs and all this stuff. We saw Jim Cramer break down in 2008, 2009 on television, demanding that Ben Bernanke step in, and he doesn't understand. Don't be an academic. You got to save these people. You can't just sit by heartlessly on the sidelines while that lion eats the gazelle. You can't, the lion in this case is the debtors. You have so much debt, you collapse their creditor system. Well, that's what should have happened, but it didn't, because they stepped in.
Right. To mitigate the brutality of nature, mankind engages in design. For example, you would see humans build a bridge, Golden Gate Bridge. This is a human artifact, connects two bodies of land over water, but it has consequences. It means the flow of things change. So, but you have to be aware of how those flows change and accommodate for that in a way that doesn't disrupt the underlying, let's say, if you can extract something called humanity from that equation. But if you just pour free money onto everything and it always trickles down to the most kleptocratic, then you create a dystopian nightmare, which we're living through now.
Right. And if somebody, an arbiter, somebody in an ivory tower academic had been able to be there during the Cambrian explosion and said, oh, those adorable creatures with 7 eyes and 3 legs, let's make sure that they don't die off, right? Let's intervene and make sure that they have a place to survive.
Yeah.
Again, we might not be here. These humans might not have evolved out of that. So you see the same thing, that the natural, the game theory, the incentives in Bitcoin are perfect. They've created a perfect money. Those outside it who try to pretend, just like in the comments under here, that we be people pretending to be us. They're not us. They're trying to scam you, right? So the same thing with the shitcoins. What they're doing is they pretend to be Bitcoin. They try to, by association, they fly to El Salvador, pretend like, hey, our coin is just like Bitcoin, right? But it's not. They're competing instead, if anything, with the likes of Microsoft and software projects, right? If they can compete with that, let them, but they're not money, and they're proven to not be money. So I want to look at this story that I just saw this past week about airline miles, because now you don't need to collect airline miles because those are centralized credits and tokens that these airlines issue, where instead you could go to Foldcard or you could go to lolly.com and you could start stacking sats with every year purchases, because those don't devalue. They're not taken from you. Here we see why you may want to use your airline points sooner rather than later. Well, it turns out that there were, despite the lockdown around the world, people were still using their credit cards and accumulating air miles. So now there's so many air miles, and yet the airlines need to start earning money because they've had a year and a half without much income. So they need cash. And what? Well, it turns out everybody has airline miles to spend. So it looks like, according to Spencer Howard, founder of Loyalty Points website, Straight to the Points, isn't so sure that it's going to be easy. He said the risk of devaluation is always present, regardless of economic or global health conditions. Quote, airlines devalued prior to and during the pandemic and will do so after we've gotten out of the pandemic. Devaluations are inevitable. And that's what we're saying is there's a constant rug pull. Like there's a way to do it like the way Mark Cuban got rug pulled, and you just flip up and lose everything. Or there's one like little tiny moves. So they like to extend and pretend like we've had 50 years now of the US dollar all fiat system. So that's about 50-year rug pull. It's like, right, they've like slowly pulling it out. In the meantime, I think it's worse in a way because you've built elaborate societies and supply chains and communities and businesses and derivatives upon that, not realizing the rug has been being pulled slowly.
Right. It's a form of gaslighting.
Yeah.
And in a gaslighting situation, after a while, you start blaming yourself.
Yes.
You start losing your mind. Like, wait a minute, these airline miles, I used to do this. They don't do it anymore. What's going on? I used to be able to buy this, a bag of groceries for this. I can't do that anymore. And I used to have, all this stuff is just fraying at the edges. And you start blaming yourself. And you develop anxiety and you have an anxiety attack. And then you start taking, you try to mitigate the anxiety, and then that causes more anxiety. So it all comes down to fiat air miles. From Fiat Airlines that are based on fiat money and bailouts, right? They all got bailed out essentially. And people are going to be stacking sats with a fold card for one, and they never expire, and the purchasing power only goes up. So Bitcoin fixes this literally. And so the airlines go ahead and devalue your miles, and they're just going to all switch to fold card and stack sats and fuck you.
Yeah. And, speaking of like they gaslight you and make you feel all alone, of course, one of the very most extraordinary fiat parabolic Ponzi schemes was Japan, right? Remember, they were like going to take over the world in the 80s. And then they've had a 30-year rug pull of like ever more deflation for all this time. So before we turn to this interview with Ben from Bitfarms, I would say his last name, but it's like a French name, and I'm not sure I can pronounce it, but you'll read it on the screen, right? So Tokyo will allow alcohol for people drinking alone. This is the most dystopian headline of 2021. So yeah, they gaslight you and leave you alone and say it was your fault, it's your problem. Here in America, we give you, of course, because we have a healthcare system that's 20% of the economy, we'll give you a prescription for some opioids. They're like, drink some of our beer. Like they have some nice beer in Japan.
Yep, have some sake and wallow in your tears. Thank you, government. We caused the problem, and we're going to give you... It's like in 1984. Remember the main character, they had that rotgut gin. That was the only thing that they had, that the government gave them, and they'd be hiding in the corner drinking this kerosene, right, basically. So Japan's gone full 1984.
But, of course, we're here for you, right? The Orange Pill community is here for each other. It's a fun, relentlessly optimistic community. Everybody's flying into Austin because we are the party. We're the future. We are the relentlessly optimistic.
The Bitcoin party.
The Bitcoin party. This is where it's at. Like, if you want to return to the fiat world and have your Wonder Bread and your, mashed potatoes and your drinking alone, go ahead and do that. But you always have us. If you want to sit here and drink your margarita over, this Sunday morning episode, make sure you put a little Mexican spice on whatever you're drinking.
Little Mexican spice always works, no matter what the dish. Little Mexican spice makes it tastier. That's what I've discovered in lockdown.
And you could use this as like a music, like sort of tambourine sort of thing.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Let's get into this interview. Ben Gagnon of Bitfarms up in Canada, a young man with a future. He's been in Bitcoin for a number of years now. Incredible story. We're going to pick his brain about farming and Bitcoining. Ben, welcome.
Thank you, Max. Great to be here.
How'd you like that introduction?
That was pretty good.
You like that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So this is, of course, Orange Pill Podcast. That's why we're showing your legs. Do you, first of all, agree that Max has the best legs in Bitcoin?
Absolutely. They're putting my legs to shame.
Really? Yeah.
That's the correct answer.
When Jessica Vaughn entered the space and she started showing her butt and stuff, we were like a little bit worried that she was going to give Max a run for his money, but it seems like it's held up.
I'm holding on the number one place. Sexiest legs in Bitcoin.
So you're our anti-FUD man. Everybody we interview about Bitcoin mining, they quote your research.
Great.
So let's talk about what is the most malicious FUD easily debunked in terms of whether it's environment, the hash rate, China controls Bitcoin. Like, which one is like your real pet peeve?
I think the environmental FUD.
Okay.
The environmental FUD is just mathematically wrong. The Digiconomist put out this Bitcoin electricity consumption index, and you can say a lot about the way that they do the methodology on that, but if you look at their data and you compare it to the world, it's very clear that Bitcoin's consumption of electricity compared to the world's total is, a fraction of a percent. We're about 0.3%, give or take, depending on the metric that you use to measure the world's energy. And then on the emissions, it's even less than 0.1% of the world's emissions, right? Now, people are saying it's a runaway problem, and it's obviously not a runaway problem right now. And then you have to look at how the market is going to grow and how the hash rate is going to grow in the future. And people expect that as price grows up exponentially, so will our energy use. But that discounts a number of different things, right? And they're not taking into account that the rate that we produce hardware is fixed. And even if we throw infinitely more amounts of money at it, the supply chain for introducing more hardware and increasing that quota is now at about 12, 15 months, right? So there is no way for us to go up parabolically this year. We can't grow 8x this year. The most the hash rate is going to be about double this year, right? Well, these indexes are claiming 8x. And then if you look at things like Financial Times, they're leveraging that and they're saying, okay, well, this is going to compound every year. They don't take into things like the halving every 4 years. They don't take into things like the watt per terahash efficiency of the computers are getting better all the time. This is fundamentally wrong.
We went through a similar thing in the .com era. They said the internet was going to boil the oceans.
Yeah.
And they made all these wild estimates that were completely off base. But the other thing to consider is what Bitcoin replaces, because if it replaces fiat money, and we know that it will, all the energy required for that entire infrastructure globally of central banks and fiat money takes up obviously more than 1/10 of 1%. It would take up probably 30% of all energy in the world. So by simply going to a Bitcoin standard, you're cutting global carbon emissions dramatically, right?
For sure. That's a great point with the financial system and what they have. You had a great point yesterday about the fiat system enabling all these wars and everything else. This is also a huge part of the carbon emissions. The number one source of energy usage worldwide is waste. Number one, right? And that's because we have all this resistance in the lines, we're transmitting in all these far places, and there's a lot of mismatch between where the infrastructure was developed, where the industry was 100 years ago, and where the industry is now, right?
So approximately a third of the 160,000 terawatt hours annually produced is wasted.
Is a huge amount.
And so Bitcoin runs on less than 1/4% of wasted energy. And whether or not Bitcoin was here or not here, that energy would still be wasted.
Exactly.
But it is used to make energy consumption and transmission incredibly more, exponentially more efficient and less energy intensive and less emissions intensive.
Exactly.
So it's complete opposite. This energy FUD is actually couldn't be more wrong.
No, could not be more wrong. And the way that they look at it is, I think a lot of people think that when we're mining Bitcoin, we're somehow taking electricity away from somebody else. That's just not the case, right? They don't understand how electricity is produced, it's distributed, it's transmitted. When we are looking at our operations in Quebec during the winter months, in the mornings and in the evenings, when people are coming home from work or they're waking up in the morning, that's when the power speaks. And the electric grid actually reaches into our facilities and turns us off for an hour or 30 minutes or whatever that is in order to transition that power over to the public use, right? As soon as that's done, we come roaring back to life. So we're always using excess electricity on the grid. And if it wasn't for us there, they'd send it off to New York and they lose 17% on the transmission and they'd sell it for half the price.
This is hydroelectric.
Hydroelectric, yeah.
Right, and so this is attracting a lot of mining operations to Canada.
Absolutely.
So what's your cost per kilowatt?
In Quebec, it's fixed between 3.2 and 4 cents, depending on where you are in the province.
And do you get concessions at all? Can you finagle different deals?
The 3.2 is as low as you can get with the concessions. So they have some economic development tariffs for more remote regions and certain parts. But it gets down to about 3.2 US.
So what's your underlying cost per coin? Around 7,000, 8,000?
We did 8,500 in Q1.
8,500 per coin.
I want to ask you about, because you mentioned the infrastructure. And of course, a lot of the major cities in the world were developed hundreds of years ago around rivers, because rivers were the major form of transport at the time. And we have now this old electric grid based around, suburbs and stuff like that. But I want to ask you about, in terms of a Renaissance 2.0, in terms of what the energy mix of Bitcoin, how that might alter the landscape of living, bringing, West Texas, for example, a totally empty desert space, but it has a lot of solar, a lot of wind power, and a lot of miners are moving there. What do you see that in terms of the possibility of how it might re-engineer the electric grid, the electric space, the human society, how we form, and operate our communities?
We see this all over North America with the infrastructure. A lot of this was built up by old industry, logging, mining, iron ore, gold, that sort of thing. So in Quebec, it was Iron Ore Company of Canada, it was Rio Tinto, it was those sorts of groups who were building up the power. Now, all of that industry has dramatically scaled back, and a lot of those companies have flat out left and they've outsourced to other countries, right? All that infrastructure is still there in terms of the production. It's still happening all the time because it's hydro, but you can't really use it for anything. And they're not attracting any new investment into those regions. Nobody wants to move to these remote parts of Quebec. We saw the same thing in New York, around the hydroelectric areas there. If you go to where CoinMin is in Messina, New York, when, I can't remember which group was there, it might have been Rio Tinto, I'm not 100% sure, but when they left, the economy was gutted up that town. Nobody had any jobs, the GDP fell through. The housing price, if you look on now, averages around $15,000, $18,000 for a house in upstate New York, in Messina.
So you're adding jobs.
Yeah.
Does the government recognize this?
Not enough. But we're starting to bring all this investment back that we've outsourced, right? And Bitcoin's the incentive to do that. And it's a really, really powerful thing, especially in these remote communities that have not seen any major investment in decades.
Is Niagara Falls part of the hydroelectric power source in Canada?
I believe that's shared with Ontario and New York, yeah.
Do people still go over Niagara Falls in barrels? And have you ever done that?
Have you tried it?
I haven't done that, but it is on my list.
You could be mining while in the barrel.
There we go.
And going down, could be, and get a camera in there, and there you are.
We
Let's
got
do an
proof of
Orange
gravity.
podcast episode. let's do an Orange Pill podcast going over the Niagara Falls. Is
Yeah.
it like a Canadian-American harmony sort of moment of like merge mining?
Yeah, as soon as the Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup,
Yeah.
we're definitely going to do
Okay,
that.
that's never going to happen then. That's never going to happen. Right. So there's also the China controls Bitcoin FUD. That is huge. That played pretty big in America for a while, especially because this Cold War is starting to emerge. Does China control Bitcoin?
Absolutely not. If you look at historically what China's done with Bitcoin mining is they were doing the same thing we're doing now. Is they were taking advantage of excess electricity that nobody else wanted to invest in, and no industry would come in to do that, right? So China followed this kind of a field of dreams, build it and they will come approach. And there's a weird deal with the Politburo. In the 250 top members of the Politburo, over half of them have degrees in hydroelectric engineering. So what kind of projects do you think they support and invest? Right? They're all hydroelectric dams. Now, they're building these hydroelectric dams not because there's any industry, but because they know that they can get it passed, right? And they know that they can get all this investment in there. So they do that, they get temporary jobs, but they don't have the high voltage lines to actually bring it to the East Coast where all the industry is. And that's years and years away for that ultra high voltage transmission. So, what else are you gonna do with it? If we don't mine Bitcoin with it in Sichuan, it literally goes into the ground and is wasted. And so what could be a bigger source of emissions than all the cement, all the steel to create all these hydroelectric dams to create electricity to put it right back in the ground with no use, no jobs, no revenue, no taxes.
Right. Well, it's an incredible story. When you look at it country by country, what country is doing it right?
That is a tricky question. I don't know if any country is
What
necessarily
country
doing
is
it
doing
right.
it less wrong?
I think the U.S. in some areas is really starting to come ahead. We've pushed forward in Canada in a number of ways. I think Alberta is starting to come along. Washington State hopefully will turn around. But it seems like Texas is the big part and Alberta is the big part. And it's the oil and gas companies who are really going to start to see this. We have so much synergy with Bitcoin maximalists and oil and gas cowboys.
Right, the flaring that goes on in these oil rigs that can be captured and you can mine coins with it and you got a revenue stream which otherwise you'd never have at all.
Absolutely.
So you also had another miner in the news, and they had their own FUD and disaster, and that was that this mining group that tried to have clean coins, and that failed. That they backed out of that. So what happened there? Like, is that clean coin, virgin coin sort of thing a dumb idea, and why did it fail?
We saw this clean coin, virgin coin thing back in 2017 and 2018
Yeah, I
too.
remember, yeah.
I remember that was the flavor of the month back in Asia. And before you knew it, everybody was trying to sell you, $100 million worth of virgin coin at a 4% premium.
Yeah.
Now, you start running the math on all these different inbounds, and it becomes pretty clear that they're trying to sell more Bitcoin than existed at the time. Right? So everybody is either bullshitting or reselling the exact same coins and trying to make a premium on it.
That's the American way.
Yeah. There's a couple of guys walking around here with their token that are saying, oh, buy our token, it's carbon neutral, it'll make your Bitcoin carbon neutral. How that works is not really clear, but if it's true, I say, why not, let's double your token issuance and we'll make your Bitcoin twice as carbon neutral.
Yeah.
Twice as neutral.
Yeah, that will be twice as neutral. I think that's the math. Yeah, you can't get. But the other thing too with those guys and the carbon neutrality, I don't think they understand. It's like, how can you even get fully carbon neutral? Because there's already one carbon in carbon neutral, right? You can never get rid of the carbon in carbon neutrality.
The art that just sold, it was the artist's imagination of air, and it sold for $18,000.
Yeah.
Right, or
Inspired.
Yeah, or that banana posted to the wall in Basel,
Yeah.
Florida.
Or the one, my banana hat.
Your banana hat
Yeah,
went for
yeah.
40,000, I think, on one exchange.
I sold it to Max for 40,000.
Yeah, I bought it for 40. You duped me. So, how big is Bitfarms? what's going on there? The operation. Scale, yeah.
Yeah, we're about 1% of the network right now, powered with 69 megawatts of hydropower in Quebec. We're contracted to get up to about 3 exahash by the end of the year and 8 exahash by the end of next year. So we're doubling our power infrastructure in Quebec right now. We've also got a couple of other projects that we're working on in Quebec, US, and Europe. And we've also are about to start construction on a 210 megawatt power plant site in Argentina.
So are you guys holding on to your coins? Are you selling them or what?
Since January 1st, I'm happy to say we've held on to almost every coin we mined. So we, as of last week, we had mined over 1,000 Bitcoin with hydro, power in Quebec and put it all into custody. And so, our goal with our company, because we're publicly traded, is we just want to make mining as simple and as accessible to people as possible. So we take all of our process, we wrap it up into our security. You can buy a share for less than a drink, and we put all our Bitcoin on balance sheet as much as we can, and you get that long-term, price potential.
So where are you listed, in Toronto?
We're listed in Toronto right now in the OTC pink sheets, and then we just got NASDAQ approval, so we'll be trading on NASDAQ right after the DTC goes through in about 1 or 2 weeks.
One of your founders was Roy Sabag.
Yeah, originally.
So he's a friend of ours and a friend of the show.
Yeah, Roy told us about this a few years ago.
Yeah.
Because he's up in Canada, because the mining industry is in Canada, gold mining, silver mining. So you're saying, what I got from this is that with Rio Tinto and these other, the infrastructure for mining is already there with hydro. They use hydro already.
Absolutely.
So you're repurposing a lot of these facilities.
It's kind of funny because that's the whole mining industry in the commodity sector is like, you mine copper and there's like silver output, or there's always like, you're like a byproduct. You're like feeding off the energy, the infrastructure that's already built there for these other industries anyway. And helping Argentina. So your project in Argentina where there's hyperinflation, you're bringing jobs, but hopefully, a lot of their assets get seized by the likes of Paul Singer. We were just talking about their Navy getting seized recently, but. So
what we're doing there with Argentina is actually a pretty great idea. We have a bunch of equipment that we've had since 2017, 2018, 2019. Older gen, mid-gen equipment. Paid itself off numerous times over at this point. What we're doing is we're putting in new equipment in our facilities in Quebec and the US that we can get financing for. We use debt to pay for all of that equipment because we can put it in a good jurisdiction. Then we take all that old equipment that's already paid itself off numerous times, we send it down to Argentina, we operate it for half the price and drastically extend the economic lifespan.
So you get the depreciation in one jurisdiction and you can resell the equipment in the new jurisdiction.
Yeah, well, I mean, these are almost already all written off for a lot of them. I mean, we got them since 2017, 2018, so we depreciate over 3 years.
Right.
They've pretty much all been written off on our books.
Right.
Now we just have a free cash flow, and we can either take a chunk of money now or a big cash flow over 1, 2, 3 years. And if Bitcoin really rips like we all think it does, or all will, this old and mid-gen equipment is like an option call on Bitcoin going up, right? So with S9s, when they first launched it, they were selling for about $12.50. At the end of 2017, they were selling for about 11,000 retail. Then when Bitcoin was about 3,400, at the low last year, we picked them up for 15, 20 bucks. We generated positive cash flow on them. Right now they're worth 550, right? So they've gone up way more in value than Bitcoin has because they were discounted.
I've got a Butterfly Labs miner from 2011.
That's the company that never shipped me my miners.
Yeah, and I'll sell it to you right now for 20 bucks.
Right, but this is important. Like the last moment here, I want to say, like, this is the thing that is remarkable about the Bitcoin space versus the fiat space, is the total misallocation of capital in the fiat space. The fact that nobody wants to work anymore because they don't want to get out of bed for less than $17 an hour, what our stimulus and unemployment benefits are now. It's like there's constant reallocation of all of our capital, like trying to find any Bitcoin wherever in the world you have to go, send your old miners, find a way to use that rather than throw it or use it as waste, get down to Argentina. It's like nowhere do you see that in the fiat space. Like they just don't care. They just print some more money and they can't be bothered with trying to maximize the profits of their product.
Yeah, they're trying to maximize their profits as fast as possible right now, right?
Yeah.
At the expense of long-term sustainable profits.
Yes.
Right? And so it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it does make sense, when you have to just keep doubling down. It's like the Shell gas play, right?
Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's get 85% of the production out of it. We actually have the financing on this well over 5-10 years, but we actually can't pay for it. So now we're going to double down with new wells, which will cover the payments from that one. But then we need it's
And even
unsustainable.
spewing all that methane and gas, they don't. I mean, it just seems so absurd.
The Red
all the
Queen
way.
syndrome, right? Keep doubling
It's all
down,
the way.
chasing.
But now I guess it's time for this interview to end on this episode of Orange Pill Podcast, Max. What do you
Yes,
say?
Ben, it's been a pleasure, and I'm sorry that we won't probably see a Canadian hockey team win the Stanley Cup this year.
That's okay.
It's okay.
That's okay with me. As long as Bitcoin does what it does, that's okay with me.
Wow, Bitcoin fixes Canadian hockey.
Well, so again, that we recorded that at Bitcoin 2021 in Miami.
Yeah.
And some fascinating information. They're about to go public, by the way, Bitfarms. But that guy, Ben, he's got all the data. He's got all the research on debunking the energy FUD.
Totally. I just talking to him, I was filled with confidence in the future in terms of mining. Mining has come under a lot of scrutiny, a lot of people talking about it. Is it energy intensive? Where does the energy come from? What's going on? And there's so much happening in that industry where abandoned energy, like flaring gas rigs, are being co-opted and used for Bitcoin mining. Hydroelectric that wouldn't be used at all for anything is being used for Bitcoin mining. It's all moving out of China, moving to Texas and other locations. And it's all part of this incredible, you mentioned the incentives built into the Bitcoin protocol and the game theory. Energy seeking and energy usage is one of the layers of the Bitcoin game theory. And we're moving away from the model we have now, which is 160 or 170,000 terawatt hours of energy usage per year. And something like 60% of that is actually just wasted energy in transmission or flaring, etc. And we're going to move to a new paradigm of much more efficient energy usage. And if you replace fiat money with Bitcoin, then a lot of the problems of fiat money go away. Like since it's unconfiscatable, you reduce the coercion and war quotient that's embedded in fiat money, because you can't just shoot somebody and take their fiat. With Bitcoin, it's unconfiscatable. They can't. There's no way to take it. So you have to change your behavior. You have to go from being a thug to being a love nut.
A love nut.
Yeah.
I do love the complexity of Bitcoin, the design, the game theory, the incentives built into it. Those early days, it was like a cute little magic internet flower, a little, flower that entices the little bees to come and, start suckling on its sweet nectar and its fun sweet nectar in order to get it to spread around and take it where it needs to go. Get somebody else to do all the work for it, right? I'm a plaything, come play with me, suckle on my, honey nectar and spread me around the world. And it did work. Bitcoin was spread, the Satoshi spread all around the world. It wasn't just concentrated in New York City, the financial center. It wasn't just concentrated in Silicon Valley, where all the tech bros are. It wasn't concentrated in any one location because of that unique evolutionary game theory and incentives built into it to first deceive. So, nature does that all the time. It deceives, right? You see the chameleons, they could change colors and fit in, look like a rock. And then some creature at the bottom of the ocean, swoops up and eats you because you didn't see them there. Or there's all sorts of deception, but at the end of the day provides survival of the hardest money ever.
All right. It's interesting with this El Salvador. Again, this is kind of the news of the month, of news of the year. It's funny because people say, I trust Bitcoin, but I don't trust El Salvador. I don't trust the government. They don't understand Bitcoin, because Bitcoin changes you. You don't change Bitcoin. So it's happening on a state level. The government of Salvador is being profoundly impacted by Bitcoin and everything. As I said, you transition to being a love nut. And that's what El Salvador is becoming, is embracing Bitcoin on this level. And, they have part of the law is essentially there's a huge priority for everybody to use Bitcoin. And people are questioning whether this is a good idea. But think about it. It's like questioning whether the Bill of Rights is a good idea. I think it's a good idea to have the Bill of Rights. I think the Constitution's a good idea. It was written by the founding fathers, and it's a good idea. The legislation put out by the El Salvadorian government is on a par with the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, Declaration of Independence. It's a good idea. And it's going to create an unbelievable love explosion.
Well,
yeah.
It's definitely like the game theory was that somebody was going to make the first move. It was already built in. And now you see Paraguay, maybe in Guatemala, but other Colombia, Mexico, they're starting to talk about this. Certainly, I think it was Paraguay, which might be the closest to it. But in terms of that, comparing it to the shitcoins and the incentives and stuff like that, this is what they do, right? So I was just talking about how flowers deceive these bees to come and suckle on their honey and then thus spread their pollen everywhere for them to do their labor. The same thing you see like with fiat world, like, okay, Safety Namus is writing the fiat standard, and I'm sure you're going to see this and that and go to his Kickstarter and support that book. But you see that with fiat food, like the natives of the indigenous people of Latin America, current day Latin America, they started using maize, right? Corn as a great source of protein and starch and the things they needed to survive a winter and blah, blah, blah. Now we use corn syrup, right? We turned it into corn syrup. There's a lot of fakery in it. They touch certain evolutionary needs in you, but it's all fake. Like it's Wonder Bread and corn syrup.
Yeah, they're gaslighting. They engender a hormonal response, or an endochromatic response, but it's not real. So it's they induce a psychoactive response, right? This is one of the things you find with scents, right? The scent of smell is the most psychoactive of the five senses, and you can smell something, let's say from when you were 1 year old, and you could smell it when you're 60 years old, and it would immediately bring you back to being 1 year old. It's the most psychoactive scent we have in our memory. And so fake scents are really powerful inducements to do stuff people don't like or don't want to do. And you see that in casinos where they blow in all this fake scent because they know which scents get people psychoactively to start gambling more, things of this nature. But that's the same thing with the food. So the food has scents attached to it. There's a fake meat scent on a fake meat. There's fake, whole food scents on fake cardboard. So they if you know that some of the big fast food restaurants, like in the seafood industry, a lot of the seafood is the shells of the seafood is not actually from the animal. These are plastic shells that are manufactured in another country. They're sent to the United States, and then the seafood salad, quote unquote, is put into the plastic shell, and then they spray that with a fake scent of seafood, and that's fake food, and you eat that, and it makes you basically sick. We were in a place where they were spraying fake smoke scent on food, and they came by with the bottle of fake smoke and said, "Would you like more fake smoke scent on your food?" And we're like, "We don't want any fake smoke scent on the food at all." So this is part of the problem, is that the inducement it is led to an economy that thrives on garbage.
Yeah. And so, when Adam Smith was talking about that, basically capitalism should mirror nature because nature is perfect. The evolution, it might be horrible to look at sometimes because creatures must die. Species must go extinct for the stronger ones and better ones to survive, or better. I don't know if it's a relative term. But look at our fiat system now, right? With the incentives and with the nutrients, the actual nutrients removed. So when you're hungry, that's your body signaling you need nutrients. not food, but nutrients. Like you need a certain amount of minerals, you need a certain amount of vitamins for your body to thrive and grow. And so it's sending you a signal, go, I need some more vitamin C. I need some more vitamin B. I need these things. Like you have to feed yourself. So people have been trained with Fiat to go and stuff some Wonder Bread and corn syrup, which has none of those. So your body keeps on sending you signals. Okay, maybe you didn't hear me. Boom, boom, hunger ping. Go get more. Like I need this stuff.
Right.
So the same with the economy, which no longer is divorced from all store value. And that's what capitalism is like started originally 10,000 years ago. The original, like when you started to store your value and be able to develop into, this higher like consciousness and societies and stuff like that. Where the money keeps on sending a signal. It's like, I need some real value here. I need some real wealth creation. And this is what all these pandemics and crashes and market chaos and all that stuff is sending.
Right.
It's like constantly having to tell you louder and louder, not that Wonder Bread, monetary policy. I need real food.
Right. The money printing is not solving the problem that the signals of the economy are sending about needing real money. They keep sending the fiat money. And they keep saying that, well, we keep printing more money and we keep giving you the printed money, but for some reason, you're not satiated by this. It's not working. So we're going to print more money. So if you go to the doctor and you're obese and the doctor says, well, what we're going to do is we're going to prescribe you drink corn syrup in a plastic bottle by the gallon every single day. High fructose corn syrup, as many people do, and they wonder why they have an obesity problem because they're not getting any nutrients.
Well, look at what they're doing instead. Remember, so what we were talking about, the intervention, how when groups of individuals intervene in the natural evolution and the cycles that happen, is they no longer admit, they're not allowed to tell their patient that you're morbidly obese. They're not even allowed to use those words now. They're saying, don't mention that because we need this system to keep going, right? We have all these Ponzi investors to pay off. Like we don't want to go back to real work. We don't want to have to like start doing real shit.
Right. The American economy is morbidly obese on fiat money.
Yeah, the entire global financial system is morbidly obese, and economies underneath that financial system are various degrees of morbidly obese. Like some are not quite obese, but mostly because they're just cut out of the grid, right? Like it kind of helps you in a way to not be injected with all that stuff.
Right. Well, one economy that's escaping is El Salvador.
Yes.
And, the World Bank and the IMF have said, hey, we don't want you doing this, which is perfect. I mean, there's no way that they would want them to do it. There's no way that the IMF and the World Bank would vote to exterminate themselves, right? So they don't like it, which means that this is correct.
They broke their own charter. So it was fake the whole way. That's what shitcoins can do, right? They could just, one guy or a committee of people can say, okay, like we're going to rewrite this contract. We're going to change the emissions schedule. We're going to change the terms of our agreement. And their terms of their agreement with the World Bank is they're supposed to, any nation, whatever their legal tender is supposed to be legal tender. It's supposed to be available for the whole world. It's supposed to be part of those global contracts. But they're saying, no, we're not going to include this.
Right.
So it's like, you're the one, you can't just like change the DNA of the structure of the system, right? You can't just, unless you run a shitcoin, unless it's not real.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. I mean, the IMF, the charter says there's nothing.
The World Bank, yeah.
Yeah, the World Bank, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this move to Bitcoin in El Salvador. But then suddenly the World Bank said, no, wait, we're going to actually change the charter now on you. We're going to do a rug pull. We're going to try to do a rug pull on you, El Salvador. But the thing about you can't rug pull Bitcoin because it's outside of the banking system and it's outside of the nation system and it's outside of the World Bank and the IMF. And it's got an emission schedule of coins, the monetary policy that's flawless and uncorruptible. And so the IMF and the World Bank are going to have to come to that Jesus moment and say, you know what? We need to get real jobs because Bitcoin has essentially fired us.
Our so-called money at the moment has 7 eyes and 3 legs. This is the problem with our money. It's okay, we tried an experiment. It was an experiment in money, and we tried it. It's failed. So that it should, and Bitcoin is here to euthanize it. Bitcoin is a better design. This is what happens. It's just the inevitable. If you have a faulty design, something better is going to go along, especially if it's a biological, if it's a system like a network. It's like it grows, the network grows and becomes inevitable.
Right. And the fact is that this experiment is only 50 years old. The experiment
US dollar,
of fiat money globally, right? So before that, you did have instances of fiat money, but there was at least one economy that had some maybe tangential tie to gold. But in 1971, that was the first time ever you had a global experiment of, hey, let's just make all money fiat, no tie to anything like gold, and it'll all trade relative to each other. So the dollar has value relative to the euro, the yen, RMB, etc. But there's no intrinsic value. There's no underlying value. It's all relative value. It's all relativism. And we, the mandarins and Politburo running the system, will issue dictates for our fiat money from time to time that will, over decades, increasingly make no sense. You know, at first they kind of sounded like they did make some sense because they were tickling the neurons of certain phrases and words that we had associated with integrity of money. But after 50 years, when Jay Powell talks, he really sounds like somebody who's just shot, you know, a massive quantity of meth and has absolutely no idea what they're saying. They're just talking these word salads of nonsense. And so that's why Bitcoin is heading to $100,000, $200,000 this year, because it's like calling time out on these lunatics.
Yeah. And again, you know, the problem, like maybe you could argue, I'll take them at their own word that they do this with good intentions, right? The whole setup was for good intentions of the whole fiat system, that they intervene in the markets with good intentions. But that's the thing about evolution of networks and living systems like this, that intentions are often like end up in really horrible results, right? Like your intention might be to like save your crop from these pests, but then you end up killing all the bees in the world, and then everybody fucking dies.
Right. Yeah. Good example. Yeah.
Yeah. So the same thing has gone on with the monetary system, and it doesn't matter how, you know, you can argue all you want. If say you do love Wonder Bread and you're not going to give up your Wonder Bread, and you love your corn syrup and you love your fiat, good, fine, stay with it. But the fact is, it is an economic and ecological and monetary disaster that are the results of it. So just so you know, as you're on your way, some people might party. If we find a meteor heading towards Earth, some people are going to go and party, and some people are going to, you know, repent.
Well, we saw that in the plague. So it divided people. Some people were self-flagellating, and the other side of society went all the way carnal escapades. You know, they went down
Carnal escapades.
Carnal escapades.
That's like that's a FOMC meeting. Carnal escapades.
Right. There's not enough self-flagellation at those meetings. There's too much carnal escapadery. Escapades.
Well, yeah, but most people will join one of these two groups, and then there's a few individuals like Bruce Willis who will get on a rocket ship and go out and intervene and stop the meteor or solve the problem, go down to Bitcoin Beach, create Bitcoin Beach,
right.
And do like, so there's always luckily a few people that are going to be brave enough to actually fix the system. And as Max Kaiser said, you know, you don't fix Bitcoin. Bitcoin fixes you. And, you know, we watch people come at it, you know, Elon, he's in that phase. You know, remember billionaires, especially somebody worth like close to 200 billion at some points, like they're surrounded by yes people, and, you know, the narcissism and ego, you have to feel like pretty amazing about yourself, right? To have like everybody talking about you, the news talking about you, you're quoted as the richest person in the world, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, it's natural. It's a natural part of the Bitcoin protocol to like call you in like, hey, sexy. Hey, you look like a big, handsome soldier. Come here and look at me. And then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to fix this lady here. I'm going to fix this Bitcoin. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin will fix Elon. He'll be fixed
Yeah.
one day.
No, because it fixes everybody. And you're right. That's exactly right. So the FUD about energy usage, which he hasn't figured out yet, he's dead wrong on. He's completely dead wrong. And
Yeah.
it's like he's a rocket. He sends rockets into outer space. It's like him coming out and saying that he's going to fix gravity. Gravity is not right. I'm going to fix gravity for my rockets.
Yeah, because
What?
think about that. Gravity is definitely consumes a lot of energy.
Yeah, gravity is the reason he's got to burn all that fuel. He said he's going to fix gravity. Well, no, you're not going to fix gravity. And Bitcoin actually is the most efficient technology ever in history that fixes everything. And you're not going to fix it. It's going to fix you.
Exactly. Even if, you got to look at the Serengeti, look at the what happens in those BBC nature documentaries. Sometimes fixing you means devouring you, getting you totally wrecked. And so you're just off the playing field. Like that's part of the evolution. That's part of perfect money. That might happen.
That's exactly right. That might happen. And it's happened to a lot of people. They get wrecked all the time. They get wrecked every single day really badly. Mark Cuban got wrecked on an Ethereum scam.
Yeah. And then, of course, again, well, I'm not the dumb one. I don't want to learn lessons because that is what evolution is, right?
Yeah.
It's a school of hard knocks. Like you make mistakes. You cross that river and you get eaten by a crocodile. Well, the other creatures you leave behind go, I'm not going to cross that river because I saw my friend get eaten by a crocodile.
Yeah.
Let's figure a way around this, right? No, he's like, well, I'm going to stop. Like, let's destroy that crocodile. Let's end all lessons, right? Let's just command and control, say like, don't let me ever lose again.
Right. He went crying to the regulators.
Yeah.
He went crying to regulators and saying, we need to regulate. I need a bailout.
That's what he was saying, essentially.
Yeah, he wanted a bailout. It's like, come on, dude. Are you a cuck or what? I mean, we realized, I thought I kind of suspected you were overrated as a businessman, but this is pathetic, dude.
Right. Well, this is a good time to evolve to the next essence of Max and Stacy, which is me making a margarita with my perfect rim. I think it's called.
That sounds interesting.
It's called the perfect rim, it says right here. So I'm going to get the perfect rim on my perfect margarita.
Wow, that's what we're calling it now.
As I contemplate going to Austin, Texas and meeting all of our orange pill people, the positive, relentlessly optimistic, no shitcoining people.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I mean, so the event is that night on the 8th.
On the 8th,
But
yeah.
a lot of people will come on the 7th and they'll be there on the 10th and stuff. So it's going to be a lot going on. Meetups, people hanging out in Austin. It's going to be a lot of meetups. It's like the South by Southwest Festival, but 1/100,000th.
Max just had the perfect rim,
Whoa.
and it is just like...
I'm so sorry, but something went wrong.
But that's a good idea, is like just drop it in the Orange Pill Podcast Telegram group, like where you're meeting up, like who.
That's what I'm trying to say.
But his tongue is evolved.
Because during that day, people will arrive earlier. Where do they go? Where are they going to meet up? What are they going to do? Everyone's going to be there. Why not do stuff? That's the
can't
point.
land on a fraction.
Right. Meet up and socialize, and we'll be hanging around and doing stuff and meeting people. It's like a conference, but without the conference, right? Just party, no conference.
That's right. And on your way there, make sure you stack at swanbitcoin.com/orange pill.
Yeah.
Just like the shirt, orange pill. It says orange pill, black flag style. And we'll see you there, but make sure, well, we're going to do 2 more episodes before then. But nevertheless, swanbitcoin.com/orange pill is the sponsor of this program. And make sure you go stack your sats there. Best way to stack, cheapest way to stack, and the only way to stack, in my opinion.
Okay, then. Ta-ta!